Hi there, history fans, and welcome back to another reaction video where we try to learn something new and to spread history on YouTube. So today we have the topic called Fall of Yugoslavia, part 1 from Future History. The link to the original video is going to be in the description below. Go give them a like and a view. So, regarding this topic and every other topic in history, I feel like that all the topics that are more like in modern history, let's say just from the Second World War onwards, you know, they are more personal because, you know, people who went through that time, who were involved in a war or an event, who suffered, who so on and so on. And the fall of Yugoslavia was in the 90s. So a lot of the people from the, let's call it, ex-Yugoslav states, so Croatia, Bosnia, Slovenia, Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, and if you want, you can also say Kosovo, have a lot of relatives, family members, people they personally know who went through the horrors of that time. So, a little disclaimer for the people who are new to this channel, I am actually ethnically Croatian. So, but I'm kinda I had both, let's say both sides in my family, like Croats in Croatia who went through the war and also Serbs in Croatia who went through the war. So I kinda have both perspectives, let's say it that way, on the war. Not so much in Bosnia, but in Croatia. So, yeah, it's always a big question if somebody can be completely objective on a topic. But yeah, I'm gonna try to be as objective as I can. So, yeah, let's just jump into the video. As always, I would like to have your thoughts on the topic and also your opinions and additional information in the comment section below. And if you want to be a part of our community, you can hit the subscribe button and don't forget the notification bell, because if you don't hit it, you won't be alerted when a new video comes out. So yeah, let's just jump into the topic.
Today we're going to crack open the case on Yugoslavia, or should I say, Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah, I can already see the comment section and the like and dislike ratio. Like, it's gonna be complete chaos.
Hello and welcome to Feature History, featuring the fall of Yugoslavia and most likely a shitstorm in the comments. Now this video,
like
or videos,
said, yeah,
are going to be quite long and complicated, so I'm not going to pad this intro out too long, like I'm doing right now. I should really stop. The series of wars that saw the end of Yugoslavia brought a close on an era and opened a new one alongside the dawn of a new millennia. This new era began in an orgy of violence, war crimes and geopolitics. Great stuff. But first I should bring us back to the old era. And the older era. Maybe even the older era. Get something to eat, this will be a long one. The Balkans, for a measurably long-ass time, has been an ethnically diverse region in Europe. It served as the border of Western, Eastern and Islamic worlds. Its long history consists of many independent kingdoms as well as even more empires attempting to conquer the region. The Byzantines, Ottomans and Austrians all took their shot at the region, but as nationalism took hold in the late 19th century, things were to change. Yugoslavia.
Okay, just a quick topic. In history we always say, or you could always say like, yeah, but this happened before this and this impacted on this and so on. So the history of the Balkan region is pretty complicated and a big topic, and I don't want to make a video of, I don't know, 2 hours. But in short, so I'm just going to focus on the ex-Yugoslav states like Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Montenegro, Northern Macedonia now, and if you wanna say that Kosovo is independent, and also Kosovo. Okay, so the big divide between I will focus on Croats and Serbs. Okay, so the big divide on the Balkan region was that Croats were under the influence of the Vatican, so they decided to be, so the Croatian kingdom back way back in history. They are Roman Catholics, Serbs, and most of the people here in the Eastern Balkan region are Orthodox Christians, so they were under the influence of the Byzantine Empire. Okay. So the next one, as he said, was also the Ottoman invasion of the Balkan Peninsula. So around the 14th century, 14th, 15th century, they invaded the Balkan area. They conquered almost all the Balkan like states, kingdoms, and everything, including Serbia. But Montenegro was fighting really hard, and they couldn't establish dominance in this small part of the Balkan area. But yeah, and also Bosnia fell, and a big part of Croatia fell. So the border was approximately here. This meant that when the Ottomans invaded, that a lot of the people went to evacuate there, or to flee, to become refugees, and to flee to the western parts of the Christian lands and northern parts. So a lot of Serbs and Bulgarians and so on, they went into the Habsburg lands. Okay, I'm not saying that there weren't any Serbs in Bosnia or Croatia before that. I'm just stating the fact. So a lot of people fled. Maybe the most notorious was Arsenije the second or the third, Crnojević, who fled with I don't know how many thousand Serbs from Serbia. Was like here approximately when the Ottomans invaded, and they left to the Hungarian part of the kingdom, to today's Vojvodina, so northern Serbia today, and they settled there. Okay, because the language between the Croats and the Serbs is so similar. I'm not saying it's the same. It's like British English and American English. And, like you have some words that are different, like the grammar is a little bit different, but they can understand each other pretty easily. Okay, so, and that meant, because of the culture and everything was kind of similar, that a lot of people would marry like Serbs would marry also Croats, and Croats Serbs, and blah 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 blah. So you have a lot of Serbs living in today's Bosnia, in Croatia, and or way back in the days even more. And you had also a lot of Croatians living in this part of today's Serbia, so Vojvodina. What else? Yeah, and of course the Austria, and then throughout history, most of the time, the Serbs were under the influence or under the rule of the Ottoman Empire, and Croatia and Slovenia were under the influence of the Habsburg Empire. So, and Bosnia was also part of the Ottoman Empire, and but eventually, in the early 20th century, they would go under the rule of the Habsburg Empire, but most of the time they were under the influence of the Ottoman Empire. What else? Yeah, that's the short version. But as you can see, you can go on and on and on and on about this one specific topic.
Region, but as nationalism took hold in the late 19th century, things were to change.
Yeah, in the 19th
Yugoslavia, a unified kingdom of southern Slavs, was the dream of their intellectuals as early as the 17th century. It'd be the ticket to their independence, a state united and a state that could resist foreign tyranny. Near the end of World War I, the southern Slavs under Austro-Hungarian rule broke away as a state of Slovenes, Croats and Serbs. The whole thing was a bit of a mess, and they turned to the only person who had an army in the area, the Kingdom of Serbia. They willingly entered a state of union with Serbia and Montenegro, forming the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes on December 1st, 1918. It was later retitled to the Kingdom of Yugoslavia in 1929, considering the old name was shit. Time passed and
yeah, as he said, the idea of uniting all the southern Slavs is a long and complicated topic, and that idea existed for centuries. And also the idea of pan-Slavism, so that all the Slavs in Europe are united in one country. But yeah, a lot of the Croats and Slovenes who were under the rule of the Habsburg monarchy, later on Austria-Hungary, felt that they're underrepresented, that they are just used and abused by the Austrians and the Hungarians, which was kind of true. And of course, they wanted to secede from the state. Some politicians less, some more. It depends on the time frame and so on. But yeah, and then they saw, and Serbia was under the Ottoman rule, and of course they broke away with the Balkan Wars and so on. So Croats and Slovenes were like, we and the Serbs, we speak practically the same language, it's practically the same culture, maybe the religion is different, but we think that we should join in a country together to resist all the big powers like, like Austria, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire and so on. So we're stronger together, and they thought like, in this country, it's going to be a country of, like mutual respect and so on, because we are all, there's a saying like, we're all, it goes something like, we are all brothers who just have another dialect or something like that. But yeah, that was practically the idea. And the thing is, after the First World War, so Italy was on the winning side of the Second World War. And as he said, like Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs, who were, like in today's Croatia, Slovenia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the state of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs. It was a new state. It was complete chaos, and it was short-lived. But Italy, after the First World War, they were on the winning side, and in the treaties, they were promised with this land, which they also got. So today's Istria, that's in Croatia, and this Slovene parts were then under Italian rule. But they were also promised this part of today's Croatia, so the Dalmatian coast, and eventually they wanted to take over with military. And then the I don't know what's the English word, but the council of that new state, they rushed in to join with Serbia into one state. Why? Because Serbia had an army, and long-standing army, plus Serbia in the First World War was actually on the winning side. And then, like they could easily repel the Italians from taking the coast. So that was the idea.
Later retitled to the Kingdom of Yugoslavia in 1929, considering the old name was shit. Time passed and the kingdom was alright. But in the late 1930s, their province of Croatia was pressured by Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy into pushing for more autonomy, and perhaps even independence. In 1941, the kingdom was invaded, divided, and conquered. The Croatians of
I'm sorry that I need to interrupt so much, but yeah. Yeah, it wasn't all that great in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia for the Croats and the Slovenes. It was practically a dictatorship later on, when the king proclaimed it in the interwar period. But and it culminated in the assassination of one of my favorite politicians in history ever, Stjepan Radić. It culminated in the assassination in the parliament. I mean, the dictatorship was proclaimed after the assassination, but a Croatian politician called Stjepan Radić, who represented the Croatian Peasant Party, was assassinated by a radical in the Belgrade parliament, and then it became a full-on dictatorship, and yeah, so it wasn't that great. And of course, there were groups that wanted Croatian independence, and maybe one of the most famous was the Ustaša, but they would later on also create a puppet state, the so-called independent state of Croatia, although it wasn't independent or anything. and they did a lot of atrocities, especially against the Serbian population inside of the Croatian territory. But
time passed and the kingdom was alright. But in the late 1930s, their province of Croatia was pressured by Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy into pushing for more autonomy, and perhaps even
but they
independence.
wanted it also.
In 1941, the kingdom was invaded, divided, and conquered. The Croatians were offered an independent state by the Germans. Under a checkered flag, the separatist Croatians were encouraged to begin a genocide against the Serbs, inspired by old religious rivalries.
Okay, yeah, as he said, like the invaders, they invade the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. It was split apart into puppet states. One of the puppet states was the independent state Croatia, which wasn't independent. It was totally under the control of Italians and Germans. They did atrocities against Jews, especially Jews, Roma, and Serbs, because there was a big anti-Serbian mentality way, like at the beginning of the establishment of the Ustasha, but it later on, like, a lot of Croats joined the partisan movement, which fought against the Ustasha and the Germans, and so on. And maybe one of the most notorious camps that were established in the independent state of Croatia is somewhere around here, and it's called Jasenovac. But yeah. And also in Serbia, they instated also a puppet state, and technically the Germans proclaimed that Serbia was actually the first country that's Judenfrei, so free of Jews, as they said it.
Croatians were encouraged to begin a genocide against the Serbs, inspired by old religious rivalries. Throughout the war, royalists and partisans fought against the occupation. Communist revolutionary Josip Broz Tito distinguished himself when he led the partisans to victory. Tito's partisans were devoted to him, and so the former monarch of Yugoslavia was to remain in exile as Tito, with some support from the Soviets, established the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in 1945. The country was organized as a...
Just a quick note, there were two resistance groups inside of the former states of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. So the first one were the Chetniks. They were the royalists, mainly consisted of Serbs, and they wanted to fight, the occupators, and then reinstate the Kingdom of Yugoslavia with a Serb dominance. And then you had the Yugoslav partisans, who in the beginning were predominantly ethnically Serbian, but then later on, as time went, more and more other nationalities joined in, like Croats and so on. And eventually the Chetniks would collaborate with the Italians, who were like taking this part of the lands, like, as I said, like the coastline, and the Germans to fight the partisans. And eventually every topic in this video is going to be a huge one, but I don't want to make as I said, like a 2-hour video. So eventually the Yugoslav partisans won, and they were also recognized by the Allies, by the Brits, by the Americans, and by of course the Soviets as the legitimate army. And eventually they won the war and took power in Yugoslavia.
Federation of 6 socialist republics: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Slovenia, and Serbia. In addition, Serbia held the 2 autonomous states of Kosovo and Vojvodina, and hosted the country's capital of Belgrade. Under Tito, the country was a dictatorship, a one-party state with a president for life. It operated on propaganda and doing whatever was necessary to maintain brotherhood and unity. Due to disagreements with Stalin and risking a near war with the Soviets, Yugoslavia became a strange blend of East and West in a time where that wasn't a good idea. It was a great idea though, as foreign aid came in from both sides and the country began to liberalize and form a unique brand of socialism known as Titoism. Tito would evoke his former life as a poor farmer and his reputation as a war hero to remain relatable and beloved with the people he reigned over. He was quick to crack down on nationalistic sentiment and so held the country together firmly, but all knew it couldn't last. Tito died on May 4th, 1980, aged 87. The old man had left the people, and so what was after Tito? Well, Tito.
Yeah, just a quick note on Tito. Tito is also a controversial figure. Yeah, although the Yugoslav partisans were mainly a let's call it a liberation army, or on the side of the victors and so on, people need to acknowledge that they also did atrocities during the war, and that's why he is controversial. And of course, in the early ages, like Tito was called like the best scholar or the best student of Stalin, and also referred to as Stalin of the Balkans and so on. And in the early days of the establishment of the state, the new Yugoslavia state, he used a lot of methods that Stalin also used, like purging and so on. But in 1947-48, they openly criticized, he and the Yugoslav Communist Party started to openly criticize Stalin and the Soviet Communist Party and blah blah blah. They also intervened in the Greek Civil War, which Stalin didn't like, and because he wanted to give up Greece to the Western powers, but Yugoslavia thought, yeah, maybe we can, like also instate a communist / socialist, whatever, state in Greece. And also because of the fact that communists in Yugoslavia didn't want to collectivize the farmland, and they actually kind of privatized the farmland, and it wasn't like the same policy in the Soviet Union. So they split, and yeah, Yugoslavia was kind of in the middle between East and West. They got money from both sides. And actually, the West was like, yeah, we have a communist state on our side, and it's good propaganda and everything. So yeah, and Yugoslavia in the Cold War times was actually part of one of the big players in the so-called non-aligned movement, which wasn't under the direct control either from the US or the USSR. But
presidency was decentralized and became collective, made up of representatives and a mostly symbolic president of the presidency. It tried to pretend for almost a decade that Tito was living on. Only when the Cold War ended, the foreign aid ceased and the economy came tumbling down did the people realize Tito was gone. The problems caused people to search for someone to blame. In Kosovo, the blame was put on the Albanians living in the area. Kosovar Serbs claimed Kosovar Albanians were pushing them out of the country and began a counter-movement against this. President of Serbia, Ivan Stambolic, decided he would send his right-hand man Slobodan Milosevic to quell the unrest in '87. When he arrived, however, he spoke only what the Kosovar Serbs wanted to hear. He created himself a devoted following. In what would be called the anti-bureaucratic revolution, he used his supporters to force governments in Vojvodina, Montenegro and Kosovo to be replaced with his allies. Eventually, Stambolic was forced to resign in favour of Milosevic in '89.
Yep.
With he and his allies in control of many areas in Yugoslavia, his representative in the presidency, Borisav.
Just look up a famous speech that Milosevic gave in Kosovo to the Serbs in Kosovo. It goes something like "Neće niko da vas bije," or something like that, when he referred to Albanians attacking the Serbs in Kosovo.
And his allies in control of many areas in Yugoslavia, his representative in the presidency, Borisav Jovic, led a voting bloc. The power was used to erode the autonomy of Kosovo and Vojvodina. The Albanian miners of Kosovo collaborated in a strike against this in '89. Milosevic had federal police troops moved in. With this, he could crack down on the Albanians. This kind of action did not sit well with the republics of Croatia and Slovenia. Slovenia's media ran with stories of Milosevic the fascist. Milosevic deemed that this was only spreading unfounded fear of Serbia and attempted to see authorities restrict Slovenia's press, only driving further sentiment that Slovenia must escape Serbia's influence. Milosevic attempted to use his Kosovar Serbs to depose Slovenia's dissident president Milan Kucan. Croatia backed up Slovenia, refusing passage to the
Yeah, the relationship between Slovenia in Croatia were pretty good back then. I mean, they weren't like in an I don't know, alliance or something like that, but they had similar interests. So, yeah.
Protesters. The political stalemate led to the 14th Congress being convened in January 1990.
Yeah, when the
Congress was
left.
attended by delegates from all republics and provinces. The debate was reform, whether to offer more autonomy to the republics of Yugoslavia or to build a stronger state of brotherhood and unity. Every proposal from Kuchan was shot down by the Serbian voting bloc. The climate became tense and very, very frustrating. The Slovenian delegation walked, leaving the Congress. When Milosevic attempted to continue without them,
And
Croatia,
then the
Macedonia
Croats.
and Bosnia and Herzegovina walked too. There was no unity to be found. When each republic held their first ever free election, national...
Yeah, regarding that, at the beginning, when all the like national sentiments arose in all the different parts of Yugoslavia, like Serbian nationalism, Croatian nationalism, Slovenian nationalism, like the Bosnian nationalism, whatever nationalism. The 14th Congress was actually there, and as you saw, like every delegation was there, and they actually wanted reforms. So they didn't want to separate from Yugoslavia. They didn't want to become independent in the early days, but they wanted to reform, improve, and so on the state, and to keep the state afloat. But then eventually, the Slovenes first said like, okay, we can't do anything. They're not listening to us. They're just voting against us. It's completely ridiculous. They walked away, and then also the others followed. But yeah, at the beginning, and one of the most important things now that we are going to free elections is the Constitution of Yugoslavia, of Yugoslavia from, oh my God, 1974. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 1974. About self-determination. So, there was a clause especially designed for self-determination in the Yugoslav constitution, which was one of the like biggest constitutions like in text or pages in the whole world back then. But it stated that every nation and nationality that's forming the unity of brotherhood and whatever, that every nationality can nation and nationality can claim independence and like self-determination and so on, and that main representatives of a nationality is the federate state. So as we see, like the federate state of Slovenia, the federate state of Croatia, the federate state of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the federate state of Serbia, Montenegro, and Macedonia. So if you live inside of let's say Macedonia, and you are a Croat ethnically, when your federate state says that, like, if you hold elections and when people inside of your territory say, yeah, we want to separate from Yugoslavia, then that federate state or that territory has the right to secede. But there are other clauses in the constitution which are problematic. And of course, let's say the Serbs in Croatia said, okay, if Croatia wants to leave Yugoslavia, but we, the Serbs, want to stay in Yugoslavia or join Serbian territory, we have also the right of self-determination. So Croats said, no, the federal territory, like Serbs in Croatia are part of the Croatian federate state, and if the majority inside of the territory says yes, then also the Serbs from Croatia will go out of Yugoslavia. But the Serbs in Croatia said, yeah, but we as a nationality, as Serbs in Croatia, we want also self-determination, and we want to separate from Croatia and join Serbia or Yugoslavia. It's really complicated, but the constitution of 1974 is really important.
Nationalist parties began to defeat the
context.
former communist ones in Macedonia, Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Croatia. In Croatia, the controversial Franjo Tudjman had come to power under the promise to protect them from Milosevic. His nationalistic sentiment and his readiness to embrace the old checkered flag brought back painful memories of the genocides that had scarred many Serbian families.
That was...
His nationalistic sentiment and his readiness to embrace the old...
Okay, so this is the symbol of modern-day Croatia, like the chessboard that looks like a chessboard, and all the different lands in Croatia are represented here in the crown. Okay, as you saw at the beginning, the fascist regime of the independent state of Croatia had also the chess piece, but the chess piece is actually really, whenever you think about modern day in history and so on, it is an old Croatian symbol. When you look, when you go to Budapest, and as I said, Croatia was in a personal union with Hungary, and later on in the same state as Hungary, inside of the Habsburg monarchy and so on. If you go into the Budapest parliament, you can also see the old chess piece, like that represents Croatia. Also in different pictures from the 16th century, whatever. The chess piece was always part of the Croatian identity, and of course, when the Croatians joined Yugoslavia, like the symbols of that nationality, especially that chessboard, was removed. Like in any other nation, it was replaced by the star, the red star. But yeah, in the beginning, you can understand the Serbs why they were like, oh my God, they're taking the old symbol. And in the beginning, when he won, and when Croatians started to use a Croatian symbol, let's call it that way. They started to use the chessboard with the first field that is white, which was the same as in the fascist days. And as you can see today, the first field is red. But you can understand the fear of Serbs living inside of Croatia.
The checkered flag brought back painful memories of the genocides that had scarred many Serbian families. The Croatian Serbs refused to let this happen again and rose up in Kanin in August, securing small arms and barricading roads. They demanded that if Croatia chose to secede, that the Serbian majority areas, or as they would later proclaim themselves, the Republic of Serbian Krajina, would not. Borislav Jovic, now head of the Yugoslav presidency, was ready to offer support to the Croatian Serbs' concerns. Tudjman, however, would not accept this and had helicopters dispatched to Kanin ready to put down the rebellion. Jovic showed his hand when 2 Yugoslav fighter jets intercepted the helicopters and forced them to return to base. Serbia's influence had now consumed the Yugoslav People's Army, and so Tudjman would have to find his own way to fight. Hungarian arms began to be smuggled into Croatia, and at the same time Slovenes held a referendum asking the people if they desired independence. The people answered yes.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty important one, and Croatians will never forget the help of Hungarians back then. So technically, while the whole world was like, what the hell is happening here? Oh, again, the Balkan area, again, like Serbs, Croats, whatever. Nobody, like, they impose a blockade on arms. So no arms should be shipped to Croatia or either Serbia, Slovenia, whatever. So the only major player that had arms inside of Yugoslavia was the Yugoslav National Army. So the Yugoslav army, and uh, yeah, the Yugoslav National Narodna Armija. Yeah, they were the only ones who were having weapons, tanks, and everything, and the Yugoslav army was really big back then. And as you saw, they got more and more under the influence of Serbian representatives and Serbian politicians and Serbian interests. And then the politicians inside of Croatia said, okay, but we also need some kind of defenses and so on. So they really smuggled weapons like AKs and so on from Hungary.
Slovenes held a referendum asking the people if they desired independence. The people answered yes. The results of the referendum and later in 91, the exposure of Croatians' arms smuggling, led to the army command requesting the presidency enact a state of emergency. Croatian representative Stipe Mjesic.
Yeah, because just imagine, like, you're the army and somebody is smuggling. It wasn't like 10, 20 weapons, but it was en masse, like really cars and everything, trucks full of weapons were imported into the state.
Strongly debated the army head in Jovic. He accused the two of attempting to create a greater Serbia, whereas the army head insisted foreign powers were conspiring to destroy Yugoslavia. Regardless if either were true or not, it would mean war. The vote was placed in the Bosnian representatives' hands, and after some serious umming and erring, it was rejected. Things calmed very, very slightly. But when Jovic's term came to an end in May and it was time that Mjesic took head, he was blocked and the title offered to another Milosevic loyalist. The Croatians responded with an independence referendum that won in a landslide, most likely because the Croatian Serbs didn't show up to vote. On June 25th, 1991, both the republics of Slovenia and Croatia declared their independence, beginning the very violent domino collapse of Yugoslavia. The fighting in
So yeah, the main problem was, or the main thing why the vote was so overwhelming, I think it was 98% or something like that of the people who went to the referendum to declare independence from Yugoslavia in Croatia. That's because the Serbs didn't want to legitimize the referendum, so they said, yeah, if we vote, we kind of accept the results, but if we boycott them, it's not legitimate. So yeah, the 10 days war, that's in Slovenia.
The fighting in Croatia had been on for some time, but now with official declarations, the YPA saw fit to involve themselves. They moved an army to Slovenia's border, which immediately prompted reactions from the Slovenes. The meant-to-be, but they totally didn't, decommissioned territorial defences prepared resistance on border checkpoints and important roads, repelling the relatively small initial Yugoslav force. A short war with little casualties, a rarity in future, the conflict would be creatively named the 10-Day War. The European community placed pressure on the belligerents to open negotiations, leading to the Brioni Agreement on July 7, 1991. Croatia, Slovenia and Yugoslavia agreed to withdraw the YPA from Slovenia and allow Slovenia to take control of their borders, given that Croatia and Slovenia suspend their declarations for 3 months. This 3 months barely fazed the fighters battling in Croatia, but Slovenia used this time to make themselves into an actual country, while the YPA prepared an invasion into that country that couldn't fail. The plan was scrapped though on the reason that it's Slovenia who gives a shit, and so Slovenia had slipped away, but at the cost of leaving Croatia in the YPA's sights.
Yeah, the war in Slovenia had just a few casualties, and as he said, it's literally called a 10 days war, but most of the fighting were in, of course, Bosnia and in Croatia during the collapse or the wars in Yugoslavia. But while the Yugoslav army was evacuating Serbia, they actually reinforced their armies inside of Croatia. And because there isn't a big Serbian minority inside of Slovenia, why the Serbian representatives like Milosevic, they didn't care about Slovenia, although Slovenia was actually the richest part of Yugoslavia, but they didn't care about Slovenia leaving. But they especially cared about Croatia leaving and taking, let's call them Croatian Serbs with them.
Tudjman's fight stemmed from his insistence that he'd defend every inch of Croatia. In spite of it though, the rebels had made great successes, securing many Serb-majority towns and then some. Yugoslavia offered support as well, giving the rebels equipment and artillery. Later the YPA itself arrived at the border as peacekeepers that allow the rebels to push forward and siege Vukovar in August. Things looked fairly bleak in Yugoslavia.
Maybe the most famous battle, especially for Croatians, or the most known, is the Battle of Vukovar. So it's a city in eastern Croatia. It's a complicated topic. Like, the city, as I said, there's a lot of intermarrying, like, between Serbs and Croats, and especially eastern Croatia was a big mixture of, like, here's a Croatian village, here's a Serbian village, here's an Hungarian village, and so on and so on. And the city of Vukovar was also like that. And eventually the Yugoslav army and the Serbs eventually took the city, and after that a lot of Croats were executed in a field. Also civilians and soldiers, captured soldiers and so on. But as he said, like, the Yugoslav army was sent there to be a peacekeeping force, but eventually they would just control the let's call it occupied territories, like install power there and control it. And a lot of non-Serbian villages inside of Croatia that were predominantly Croatian ethnically were also captured by the Serbs. So they were able to push even further. So in the first part of the conflict, the Serbs were, like, mostly on the victorious side. So they would conquer more land and be more victorious in battles and so on.
Peacekeepers that allow the rebels to push forward and siege Vukovar in August. Things looked fairly bleak in Yugoslavia. So bleak that Macedonia passed a referendum and left. Just like that. That makes everything seem a bit dry.
Yeah, because Macedonia doesn't have doesn't have a big Serbian minority, like Slovenia.
Dramatic. The bleakness also caught the attention of The Hague, who arranged a peace conference with all 6 presidents. Tudjman insisted Croatia had the right to secede. Milosevic countered that then Krajina should too. Lord Carrington, head of the conference, asked if Milosevic would be prepared to accept Croatian independence if it was subject to the human rights of Serbs living outside of Serbia. Milosevic answered yes. When the written deal arrived though, it stated that all 6 republics would take this route. Milosevic could not agree. He had no intentions of breaking up Yugoslavia. By November, Vukovar fell, and those who...
As I said, it's always the same. Croats want the whole territory of Croatia, like the federate state of Croatia wants to separate from Yugoslavia. Everybody living inside of that federate state will form the new state. But Serbian politicians say, okay, Croats as an ethnic group or a nationality, the Croats can leave, but also so can the Serbs living inside of Croatia. You can see it. It's always the same argument.
He had no intentions of breaking up Yugoslavia. By November, Vukovar fell, and those who had resisted were subject to massacre. By the dawn of 1992, a UN ceasefire would put a pause to the pain. However, another conflict had been brewing alongside the Battle of Vukovar.
Yeah.
Yep, awesome. That's enough of that. I nearly would have gone and spoiled you there. Part 2 will be out around the end of the month if I actually stick to schedule, so expect it next month. See ya. Today we're going to crack open the...
Yeah, as I said, it's a 45 minutes. Oh my god, and the video was 10 minutes long. So as I said, it's a big and complicated topic, and really you can expand on this topic like 10 times, but I didn't want to make this video a 2-hour video. If you're interested in that topic, search through the internet and so on. One thing to note, like we're now entering the more of the conflicts and so on. I'm not saying that one or the other side were angels. No, there were bad actors on one side and the other side and everything. And I know that a lot of people just play the blame game and whatever. No, just acknowledge, as I always say, the good, the bad, and the ugly of your country. That's the only way you can get a full picture of the history, of the truths, the facts, and where you can build like your own perspective yeah. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that I wasn't too subjective or whatever. And yeah, see ya until part 2 comes out.